Okay, let's unpack this. We're diving into a world that, well, it shapes our daily reality, sometimes without us even realizing it. Media manipulation, specifically how it works online with blogs and digital news.
And we've got a pretty unique guide today, someone who was right there in the thick of it, a former media manipulator telling his story.
Yeah, our source material is excerpts from Trust Me, I'm Lying, Confessions of a Media Manipulator by Ryan Holiday. So this isn't guesswork. It's straight from someone who admits he, quote, lived high and well in that world, creating false perceptions through blogs.
Absolutely, and he's pretty upfront about his role, but he also wants to shine a light on the whole system. He says something like, I'm not sure where my responsibility begins or ends, but I am ready to talk about what happened.
Right. So he's taking some ownership. It's also saying, look, the system itself, the online media environment, has these fundamental issues baked right in.
And that's really our mission here, isn't it? To get a handle on the mechanics, the specific tactics, the economic drivers that make it all so vulnerable.
The real world effects, and maybe most importantly, how this stuff actually impacts you, the person scrolling through news feeds every single day.
We'll walk through the tactics laid out in the source, look at some historical context he brings up, and really examine how the system seems to, well, encourage this kind of manipulation.
And just to be clear, everything we're discussing, it's based strictly on the source material provided. No outside opinions here.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Why? Why is this online world so easy to exploit? The source actually points to a problem that's, well, older than the internet. It quotes Edward J. Epstein.
Right. And Epstein's point, as cited, is that journalists, they're rarely eyewitnesses, are they?
Almost never.
So they become entirely dependent on self-interested sources for their information. That dependency, that's the crack in the foundation.
That's the initial vulnerability. And then you layer on the specific pressures of blogs today. What drives them?
Oh, it's economics. It boils down to clicks, page views, traffic. That's the currency.
Because that's how they make money. Ad revenue, influence. It all comes from eyeballs on the page.
Huge pressure. Constant pressure.
And the competition isn't just site versus site. It's article versus article.
Exactly. The source puts it really vividly. It takes publishers right back to the digital street corner, trying to hawk that single story with the loudest possible headline.
Which naturally leads to
a bottomless pit of need. For new news, exciting news, shareable stuff, something that will grab attention right now, it has to be viral.
And that hunger is exactly what manipulators feed on. Okay, let's get into the tactics. Tactic number 1, trading up the chain. What's the idea?
It's basically starting small, plant a story in a minor outlet like a local blog.
Where maybe the standards aren't quite as high or they're just desperate for content.
Precisely. And then you use that initial piece of coverage as proof, as leverage to get it picked up by slightly bigger outlets. You climb the media ladder.
The source maps it out, right? Level 1, small, local blogs. Level 2, mid-level sites, maybe aggregators or bigger blogs like HuffPost back then.
And level 3, the big leagues. National news, mass media.
And the genius is understanding why starting small works. Less scrutiny down there.
Easier to get in the door. And then, crucially, those level 2 sites, they often watch the level 1 blogs for story ideas. They see something bubbling up.
Oh, this got covered on that local blog. Maybe there's something here.
Exactly. And then the level 3 outlets, the national ones, they're monitoring the level 2 sites, and the big aggregators think, Reddit, dig back in the day, if a story's trending there.
That's seen as proof of concept. It signals, hey, this story has legs. It could drive traffic for us too. Less risk for them to cover it.
And once it hits that top tier, the source says they get to use the magic words. NBC is reporting, or according to the Times, instant credibility boost for a story that might have started as, well, not much at all.
The source gives a really concrete example, doesn't it? The charity video one.
Yeah, walk us through that.
Okay, so the manipulator makes this video for a charity. But it's crafted, right? It exaggerates certain things, maybe focuses on, say, exotic locations that look great on camera, but weren't actually where the most impactful work happened. Designed for appeal, not accuracy.
Shaping the news right from the start.
Totally. Then they write a little article, embed the video, and place it on a carefully chosen small local Brooklyn blog. One they know gets monitored by, say, the Huffington Post's New York section.
Smart. Did HuffPo bite?
They did. Picked it up as local news, ran it in their NY and LA sections. Then the next step, send links to that coverage from a fake email address, mind you.
Wow, a fake email.
To a CBS reporter in LA. And guess what? The reporter does a TV segment using clips from that original edited and maybe slightly misleading video. The bait worked.
But how did they guarantee it went even bigger?
Well, anticipating this, the manipulator had already been active on Reddit, so when the HuffPo and CBS stuff hit, they helped push it there, got it onto the front page of Reddit.
And that's the gateway to the mainstream.
Often, yes. According to the source, mass media reporters are constantly scanning Reddit, looking for what's hot, what's trending, a story blowing up there. That's a strong signal it'll generate clicks nationally. It feeds itself.
It's kind of incredible just methodically pushing it up the chain, which leads nicely into the next tactic. Tell them what they want to hear, exploiting that journalist dependency again.
Exactly. That core vulnerability relying on self-interested sources. They need sources, and sources always have an angle.
And there's a specific tool the source highlights for this, HEOR.
Yeah, HO, help a reporter out. Tagline, free publicity. The author is brutally honest. Says he used it to basically con reporters from huge outlets, ABC News, Reuters, Today Show, New York Times, sometimes even having assistants pose as him.
So it's not really about reporters finding objective experts.
Not according to the source, no. He frames it as mostly a playground for self-interested sources pushing their own agenda or product.
And it's a way to manufacture expertise from scratch.
That's the really clever or maybe cynical part. You use HARO, get a quote in some small blog that doesn't check credentials too closely. Doesn't matter.
Okay.
Then you use that quote as seen in blog X as your credential to get quoted in a slightly more reputable place.
And you just keep repeating that.
Pretty much. The source says you could quickly become a nationally recognized expert featured in A, B, and C. But, he stresses, the only problem is that it wouldn't be real. Your whole authority is built on sand, on a chain of easily gamed mentions.
That's unsettlingly simple.
Hmm.
Okay, this next one is fascinating and kind of dark. Forget your own bullshit. The idea that the manipulator gets caught in their own web.
Yeah, it's a really interesting psychological insight. The author shares this story, right? He's at dinner, mentions some scandal, and he knows, deep down, it's probably fake. Maybe something he helped spread, but he repeats it anyway because it's, juicy.
Yeah.
Interesting.
What did he realize from that?
That he'd started to genuinely lose track of what was real and what wasn't in the media noise he lived in. And worse, he kind of stopped caring. He quotes Bud Schulberg about indulging in the illusion, we can deal in filth without becoming the thing we touch. And then says basically, yeah, I don't have that illusion anymore. The system consumes you.
That's heavy. Oh, okay, moving on. Tactic 4. Make them feel something. This gets right to the heart of virality, doesn't it? Emotions.
Absolutely. Some emotions spread online, others just don't. The source points to research showing anger is a huge driver. Way more effective than positivity for making something go viral.
Anger beats happiness for shares.
Seems like it, yeah. And sadness, totally unviral. It's described as low arousal. It actually suppresses the urge to share. Nobody wants to share something that just makes everyone feel bad.
The Detroit photo slideshare example really illustrates this.
It's a stark contrast. You had Magnum Photos posting these really poignant human photos of decay in Detroit, people losing homes, poverty. Real photojournalism. Got barely any comments over years.
Okay, and the comparison.
Compare that to, say, Huffington Post running slideshows of Detroit ruins. But crucially, without people, just the crumbling buildings. Those went massively viral. Thousands of comments, tens of thousands of likes.
So pictures of empty decay spread, but pictures showing the human cost didn't. Why?
The source suggests, citing another article, that the viral photos evoked awe, maybe mixed with anger or surprise, high arousal emotions. They make you want to react, share, comment. Whereas the photos with people evoked sadness or empathy, which are low arousal. Less likely to trigger that sharing impulse.
It's about the emotional valence, then, the intensity.
Exactly. High valence, strong positive or strong negative drive shares. Anything in the middle. Nuance, complexity, mixed feelings. That stuff doesn't spread easily online. It's not built for it.
Which naturally leads manipulators to deliberately provoke strong reactions, like indignation or arousal.
Oh yeah. The author talks about running those controversial American Apparel ads. They knew the ads broke standards, knew they'd get pulled down fast.
But that was the point.
That was the entire point. Generate buzz, chatter, outrage in the short time they were up. He says the controversy generated tens of thousands of dollars in sales. The penalty for getting caught. Well worth paying, he says, for the attention. It's about manufacturing chatter by hitting those high-valence emotional buttons.
Wild. It's pure emotional engineering. Okay, next tactic.
Oh.
Sell them something they can sell. This brings in some history, comparing blogs to the yellow press.
Yeah, it's a really powerful analogy. He contrasts the old party press, small audiences, clear editorial lines, not really mass news, with the rise of the yellow press.
Like the New York Sun in 1833.
Exactly. Sold cheap, on the street, one copy at a time, cash and carry. The source argues this didn't just create the newspaper business model, it basically invented the modern idea of daily news as a commodity.
And selling one copy at a time created a problem. The
Yeah.
one-off problem.
You couldn't just wait for big news to happen. You had to make every single day's paper exciting enough for someone to buy it on the street. You had to create news, or at least the feeling of news.
So reporters were expected to.
Find news when it happened, sure, but also, quoting the source, to make it up when it was not. Yellow papers paid tipsters, press agents, early manipulators. Hoaxes were common.
Like the George Templeton Strong anecdote about the Civil War news.
Right. He doubted the newsboys shouting about Fort Sumter because he just assumed it was another fake story, a sell to move papers. But that issue sold like crazy. The source even suggests the success of selling the Civil War helped fuel the demand for the later Spanish-American War. Once you create that public appetite for sensation.
It demands to be fed. And the argument is that blogs today are in the exact same boat.
Pretty much. Competing article by article, that digital street corner vibe. Less incentive for long-term trust when survival depends on the next click. They need constant content, constant angles.
And manipulators can help fill that need.
The source says bloggers are often fine with manipulators easing their burden. Hand them a ready-made story, a provocative angle. Less work for them.
So the tactic is just give them a clickable headline.
Give them something they can sell. Exploit their need, maybe even their ambivalence about bending the truth. The source admits to leaving things speculative, providing just enough for a blogger to run with an exciting angle, rather than giving dull, official facts.
That pressure really explains a lot. Okay, next tactic. Kill them with page view kindness. This dives into analytics.
Oh yeah, this was huge for blogs. Suddenly you could track exactly what people read, clicked on, shared. Those page view stats became crucial.
Not just for business reports, but actually guiding what gets written.
Absolutely. The source calls those most popular lists you see everywhere a compass for editors. If you, as a manipulator, can mess with that compass, you can steer the ship, because their incentives are tied to those numbers.
So how do you become a reliable source of traffic for a blog?
You make sure your story looks good in their stats. If you're pushing a client's story, you promote the blog's article about it on your client's own website, social media.
Yeah.
Artificially inflate its page views.
You can just buy traffic directly.
Yep. Services like StumbleUpon or Outbrain back then let you send thousands of clicks to a specific URL for pennies. It creates, as the source says, illusory confirmations for the blogger that your story is hot stuff.
Do they know it's fake? Or care?
The source is pretty blunt.
Yeah.
The stat counters aren't great at telling fake from real, and nobody cares enough to dig deep. It's easier to just see the numbers go up. He calls it an indirect bribe.
So the blogger is happy because you gave them good stats, even if they're manufactured.
That's the implication. He argues blogs aren't doing favors, not even printing the truth, if it doesn't perform well in the stats. He mentions trying to show bloggers real-world consequences of inaccurate stories about a client factories. Jobs didn't matter. It wasn't a clickable story.
And even good content has to be warped to fit this model.
Yeah, he talks about trying to place excerpts from a well-researched book. Too long, too complex, had to be chopped into itty-bitty bites, stripped down, spoon-fed to bloggers and readers, optimized for clicks, not depth.
That need for the itty-bitty bite, the angle, leads right to the next tactic. Just make stuff up. Or angle hunting.
It's the core paradox, right? The real world is often complicated, maybe even boring. But news has to be exciting, so bloggers have to find the angle.
And they're doing this constantly.
The source says maybe a dozen times a day, often flying solo without editors. They need to smell the angle, like a shark smells blood, because clicks often mean money or job security.
And the danger comes when they force an angle that isn't really there.
Exactly. They grab onto like tiny scraps at a random tweet, a Craigslist comment, and apply abnormal keenness to see some huge controversy or pattern that doesn't exist, like scanning complaint boards for stories.
And they can't just investigate and drop it if it's nothing.
That luxury is gone online. No topic too mundane that you can't pull a post out of it. You have to spin something.
Which makes it easy to create fake urgency or exclusives.
Oh, totally. Give multiple blogs the same exclusive tip with an illusionary 20-minute head start. At a fake deadline going live first thing, and the pressure to publish first often overrides fact-checking.
The tiny things get blown way out of proportion through angle hunting.
That's the result. The source uses the Jim Edwards American Apparel example. This blogger apparently spun wild theories why the CEO must resign, based on, like, math errors and rumors, using leaked fake ads as proof.
Were the predictions accurate?
Source says not one, just pure speculation driven by the need for a killer angle.
And terrifyingly, the system can generate the stuff itself, even without an outside manipulator pushing.
That's maybe the scariest point. When the author had to defend AA against misinformation the kind of usually created for others, he saw blogs just making stuff up because controversy drove traffic. If he didn't feed them something, they'd find someone else, maybe someone willing to lie, to get the angle they needed. The system was self-perpetuating fake news.
It sounds like a monster was created. Which brings us to the consequences. The monster attacks.
Yeah, the cheap attention comes at a cost. The flaws in the system create opportunities, but also real dangers. Blowback is inevitable.
The toxic nail polish story at Jezebel is used as a key example.
It's a perfect case study, based on one tweet claiming the polish exploded and was toxic. Within an hour. Dozens of blogs were repeating it. Some had even reviewed the polish positively before.
Why run with it so fast?
Because it was compelling, shocking, clickable. Truth was secondary. The company needed an hour for lawyers to approve a statement. By then. Game over online. Damage done.
And mainstream media got sucked in too.
Yeah. The source shows an email from CNN asking about hiring practices based on a Gawker rumor. They specifically asked for a denial just so they could frame it as a story with two sides. They wanted the controversy itself.
Andrew Breitbart is highlighted as someone who mastered this game.
Yep, Breitbart understood the media, especially online. Kind of likes being played if it gets them engagement. The Shirley Sherrod thing. Outlets got 3 stories out of it. The outrage, the correction, the how we got it wrong meta story. Triple the clicks. His edited clips appeal directly to anger, overwhelming any fact-checking impulse.
And James O'Keefe followed that playbook.
Source argues O'Keefe learned there's a huge market for outrage in blogging, and you can deliberately provoke it for gain.
This leads to content feeling, engineered, genetically modified entertainment, the source calls it.
Content shaped by data and algorithms for maximum virality, not by human editorial judgment. Like the Cheeseburger Network, hiring beta scientists to engineer more smiles per people per day.
Engineering emotion with spreadsheets.
Pretty much. No room for risk. Everything has to be a predictable hit based on metrics.
And demand media as a content factory.
A prime example, algorithms dictate topics based on search trends. Writers fill templates. The source argues the real audience isn't the reader, it's the advertisers whose metrics the content serves.
And this becomes the default mode for creators online.
The source suggests, yes, it becomes second nature for everyone. Bloggers, YouTubers, meme creators. Driven by data or just the implicit understanding of what gets attention. Engineering engagement is the goal.
The source also flags the delegation of trust and the link illusion as problems.
Relying on other outlets is an old practice. It worked better when outlets had high standards, incentivized by costly business models. Errors cost subscribers back then.
But now blogs just rely on other blogs.
Yeah, hitting refresh, chasing each other's leads. But the source says it's built on illusions. They're not checking the original source. They're just echoing the last blog in the chain, which might lead back to nothing solid.
And the link illusion exploits this.
Big time. A link looks like a source, like proof. But it can point anywhere. It shifts the burden onto the reader to check. Blogs abuse this, linking vaguely to imply credibility where none exists.
Devious. This connects to the iterative hustle online journalism's supposed philosophy.
Yeah, the claim is, getting it right is expensive, getting it first is cheap. So publish fast, maybe imperfectly, and fix it later. It lets sites revisit a story multiple times for more clicks, more updates. They call it a learning process.
But the reality is less noble.
Much less. Source says it means rumors, half-truths, shoddy work, endless speculation. Live blogs instead of verified reports. Relying on readers or rivals to catch mistakes after publication.
Profitable, though.
Very. Cuts costs like fact-checking. And controversy generates more comments and links than careful reporting. Calling it anything but a money-making tactic is, the source says, a lie.
Do they actually welcome corrections?
Source is skeptical. Mentions Gawker's Nick Denton complaining about corrections wasting editorial time. They often bury abates at the bottom or frame corrections as just your opinion versus theirs, avoiding real retractions.
What about the difference between fixing a fact and being wrong?
Key point. Just removing a wrong fact doesn't erase the story's original may be damaging impression. Real errors demand rethinking the whole story, not just a quick update. But that takes time and kills the buzz.
And does this iterative approach even work for the reader psychologically?
Source argues no. Uses the Wikipedia Rock Or example, thousands of edits. But most people saw it while it was wrong. Each correction reinforces the initial failure. You were told something incorrect was fact.
Plus the backfire effect, corrections making things worse.
Yeah, that University of Michigan study. Sometimes corrections make people cling harder to the original misinformation.
So claims get pushed out fast, but corrections hit a wall.
Exactly. And just seeing those crazy headlines over and over, even if untrue, warps your sense of reality. The unbelievable starts to seem plausible through sheer repetition.
And trying to correct a false story just gives it more oxygen.
It's the paradox. Engage, and you validate it.
Yeah.
Stay silent, and it stands. The whole iterative justification crumbles. And being caught manipulating often doesn't stop bloggers covering you. Again, the correction itself is another story, more clicks.
It sounds like a system that almost enjoys tearing people down, which is the degradation ceremony.
Yeah, using that anthropological term, blogs, especially Gawker-style ones, perform these ritualized public punishments.
Why? What's the purpose?
To single someone out, denounce them, lower their status, expel them from the normal group, vent anger, strip their dignity. Public spectacle, like the Woody Allen billboard example.
And snark is the weapon.
A key weapon, punishing people labeled douchebags. Sports bloggers jealous of athletes, music critics showing off by tearing bands down, Gawker writers mocking celebrity. Defending yourself just makes you look weak, a better target.
The Scott Adams Dilbert creator incident.
Attacked by Jezebel, then piled on by other bloggers, got his Facebook hacked. Source says it turned him into a laughingstock, chilling his creative freedom. Everything viewed through that lens afterwards.
Roger Ebert, too. After a tweet.
Attacked, Facebook hacked. Source argues these aren't isolated cases. Blogs serve this function, public punishment. Compares it to Salem witch trials, using speculation to tear people apart.
What about justice, then?
No, it's spectacle. Makes readers feel superior, vents anxieties by watching others fall. Stresses the target is a freak, the reader is normal, a digital blood sport.
This sounds incredibly disorienting, leading to the age of unreality and no authorities.
When clicks drive everything, the news cycle is frantic, incomplete, scandals erupt from shaky info, news covers the reaction. Daniel Borsten's word unreality fits perfectly. Source leans heavily on his book, The Image.
And pseudo-events fuel this.
Totally. Events staged just for media attention. Press conferences, product launches, leaks, those controversial ads. They don't achieve anything tangible, just inject narratives. Think Apple keynotes.
And blogs rely on these even more.
Yes, they depend on them. Source mentions a Business Insider editor openly asking PR people for fake news. The blogger becomes a willing participant in the unreality.
But the unreality has real consequences.
That's the danger Walter Lippmann warned about, cited by the source. Counterfeit events get laundered by media, passed off as real, and people act based on them. Our responses are real.
And the language itself contributes.
Hugely. Blogs use words like developing, exclusives. Sources say the language of real journalism to make flimsy stories seem important. Using the symbols, the abandoned shells of authority, for sensationalism.
Preying on our ingrained trust in publication.
Exactly. We're taught if it's printed, it must be true, or where there's smoke, there's fire. Those assumptions make the public easy targets. The author admits using this naivete while also being fooled himself sometimes.
So in this age of no authority, where do we find reliable context?
That's the problem. We crave it, but we look to blogs, Twitter, YouTube platforms driven by attention. They use those empty symbols of authority like putting film festival laurels on a home movie. Looks legit, but isn't.
So the system just reduces everything to
Conflict, controversy, crap anything for clicks. It pits you, the reader, against the world through constant outrage. Creates this dense fog of mis-in, dis, and uninformation where nobody knows what's real. And manipulators thrive in that fog.
It's striking that even Nick Denton, who helped build this, reportedly became unhappy with it.
Yeah, the source says Denton hated the monster, but didn't see how his own sites created the market for the very fake news he disliked. The author, too, expresses clear discomfort with his role.
But the source ends with a challenge, right? A way forward.
Yeah, suggesting we've seen media cycles like this before. Now that we understand the mechanics, maybe we can choose a different ending. It's not set in stone.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive, the core message from Trust Me, I'm Lying is pretty stark. Online media, fueled by economics and the hunt for attention, isn't just vulnerable to manipulation, it's almost designed for it.
Right. Through specific tactics, exploiting our emotions and the system's weaknesses, creating this unreality where truth is blurred and public shaming becomes, well, entertainment. A digital blood sport, as you said.
And the warning from inside is clear. Playing this game has consequences for everyone involved.
But it's not hopeless. We don't have to accept this abusive media system. The source points to history, things like stronger libel laws demanding real conspicuous retractions, not buried updates, or even old colonial laws requiring publishers to post bonds, holding them financially liable. Society can demand accountability.
And we need to ditch some faulty assumptions.
The biggest one being that easy, instant information publicity, knowledge, profit is possible or desirable. That delusion, the source says, fed the monster most heartily. We didn't see the costs.
The hard truths are pretty unavoidable.
You can't have news instantly and have it done well. You can't shrink complexity to a headline without losing something vital. You can't manipulate news without it eventually being used against you. And you can't have quality news for free. The costs are just hidden paid in truth and societal trust.
Understanding those hidden costs is key, appreciating the value of real journalistic work.
So now that you know how much of what you see online is shaped by these forces, economics, manipulation, the hunger for clicks and outrage,
Yeah.
the real question becomes, how do you, knowing this, decide what to trust and where to get your information?
And for anyone wanting to dig deeper, the source recommends a couple of books.
Yeah, The Image by Daniel Boorstin, that classic critique of media creating pseudo-events and false reality, and works by Edward J. Epstein, who, like Holiday, digs into the hidden economic drivers behind media behavior.
Both sound essential for navigating this landscape.
Absolutely. Hopefully understanding how it works helps you see it more clearly.